Hello, I'm Miss A, and this is my digital unit plan regarding Hamlet, written by William Shakespeare. As you can see, this is the website for the digital unit plan, hamletwithmissa.weebly.com, and we are on the home page right now. So, scrolling down the home page, you see that this is for the subject area English, and I teach grade 12. This unit summary, basically it says how I want students to learn what they're going to learn, what skills they're going to take away from this class, and what I hope they're also going to take like 5 lessons away from this class. I will cover all of what is going on in unit summary in this screencast, so don't worry about it. So here are the California content standards. First, we have determine 2 or more themes or central ideas of a text and analyze their development over the course of the text, including how they interact and build on one another to produce complex account. Provide an objective summary of the text. Cite strong, thorough textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences drawn from text, including determining where the text leaves matters uncertain. Determine the meanings of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative, cognitive, and technical meanings. Analyze how author uses and refines meanings of a key term over the course of a text. Write arguments to support claims of an analysis in substantive topics or text using valid reasoning and relevant and sufficient evidence. I'll go over why I chose these California content standards. First off, obviously, I want students to understand what is going on in Hamlet. Because Hamlet isn't exactly written in modern English, it can make it difficult for students to understand what's going on. But I eventually want them to understand Shakespeare's language, because he leaves things ambiguous, uncertain, which leaves the text open to a lot of interpretation. That means the text is able to be interpreted in a multitude of ways, and sometimes even in contradicting ways. So I want students to be able to take central ideas or themes, create an idea about it, their viewpoint of the play, to make an argument about it, and to use strong textual evidence to support their viewpoint. All of these skills are necessary to write a good essay on the AP test, and that's what we're going to be focusing a lot on this unit, is writing for the AP test. So here are some of the big ideas we're going to explore during this unit. How do familial bonds affect the way we make social bonds in the future? How does the idea of mortality impact how people live their lives? Why do people think it's emotionally fulfilling to get revenge in the long run? And what is madness? Here are the student learning objectives. Students will be able to write a coherent paper discussing their ideas on the themes in Hamlet and cite textual evidence to support their point of view. Students will be able to identify symbols and motifs in the text. Also, they will learn the importance of character roles and use the information to write an essay that scores a 9 on the AP test. Students will be able to communicate their interpretation of Shakespeare's words in Hamlet and argue the literal and figurative meaning of the text. So we skip to Teacher Lecture 1. Below is the guided notes that I've made for a lecture that covers Shakespeare and mortality. In this lecture, I go over Act 5, Scene 1, and this is the scene where Ophelia has died, and Shakespeare has discovered that this is her funeral, and there's a lot of beautiful soliloquies that reflect about death, especially Hamlet holding York's skull. And I think it's just, basically, this presentation focuses on what I think is important about mortality, and I wanted to share those ideas with my students. But also, I leave a lot of blank spaces in my guided notes because I want them to write down their own ideas about the text, and I don't want them just to take what I say, because like I said, the text can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, and I want them to be able to make their own interpretations, how they see the play. The play cannot be seen in one way. I want to show students that this play has to be viewed in a lot of different ways. So moving on, this is the Weber size, and I want students to make book cards. Book cards, essentially, here are how book cards are so important. In this class, I require students to read a lot of outside novels because the AP test, the third question, is just a question, and it's not based on a specific book or play or poetry. And the reason why book cards are so important is because they help summarize all the information that you might need to answer that third question. And since Hamlet is such a diverse play, there's a lot of themes and characters and settings in Hamlet that can help you answer that third question effectively. So book cards help summarize all the information you need to know. As you can see, you need the date of publication, historical information about the publication, biographical information about Shakespeare, characteristics of the genre, so on and so forth. This is a really good study tool to help students remember all the information they need. Because, like I said, we cover Shakespeare kind of early in the year, and students probably will forget some of the information. But this will help them refresh it just in time for the AP test, ensuring that they'll be able to answer that question well. This isn't the only book card we're going to do. This is just our Hamlet one. So, that's why I wanted students to do book cards. They're really long and they're a bit tedious to do, but they're very, very worth it to do it properly. So moving on to lesson 3 is the graphic organizer. So I have students do double entry journals because I found them really effective when I was in high school. So here are the directions for the double entry journal. They have to find 5 quotes in Act 1 of Hamlet that they think are important or significant or interesting. Basically, what I hope double entry journals accomplish is that they'll be able to recognize an important quote and be able to talk about why it's important and use textual evidence to support why they think it's important, and overall help their argument on a certain viewpoint of the text. And I do double entry journals, but I also want students to do this in their weekly Cornell notes. That way I could see that they're able to get deep ideas from the text and they're learning. And so here are some unit resources because, like I said, Shakespeare is really ambiguous and his language may be hard for students to understand. So here we have a lot of resources that students can use. So we have helpful links like Quizlet. I like Quizlet because it's online flashcards, doesn't waste paper. It tests the characters, or the students know who the characters are, basic plot points. This is a really good set that I liked, so I had the students use it. And here we have Shmoop. Shmoop is a website that, introduces Hamlet, can discuss important themes, characters, quotes. If students feel lost, like why aren't they able to derive any ideas of their own, they can use the ideas on Shmoop as a guide for them to create their own ideas or what themes they think are important. So I think that's very useful. Here we have the PBS Learning Media, Shakespeare Uncovered. Now I thought this was really interesting because it talks about things that wouldn't be necessarily discussed on Shmoop, like the supernatural elements in Shakespeare, And this talks about Hamlet's father, who's a ghost that comes back and tells Hamlet that he needs to kill his uncle. And other interesting things like that, and the use of soliloquy, and all this good stuff that I think students can get a lot from if they choose to read it. And then we have Sporkle, which has a variety of quizzes that students can use to test their knowledge on Shakespeare to make sure, or on Hamlet to make sure that they're understanding what's going on, and if on the AP test they ask questions about it, then they would understand what's going on. And here we have Shakespeare's Words. Now Shakespeare's Words is nice because it provides the folios, which is the original text, the modern text, and the definitions. And if that is still too hard to understand, there is also the Shakespeare No Fear SparkNotes one, which also has translations into modern English. Now, I want my students to use the No Fear and Shakespeare's words sparingly, at least the modern text translation, because in the translations, a lot of Shakespeare's language can be lost, and that means they don't make their own interpretations based off the original text. So I just wanted them to use it carefully. So here we have the Cliff Notes video summary. I'm just going to pause that for a second. And this basically will give a small summary of Shakespeare's Hamlet if students are really, really confused about what's going on. And I left John green, so I included crash course videos about Hamlet, which I found really informational because it gave background information of Hamlet and Shakespeare and the setting. And I thought it was good for students to know this kind of information to help make connections. And here we have 2 graphic organizers that I found that will help students understand Hamlet. So as you can see, this graphic organizer will help organize students' ideas, what's going on in the play, and it's really good to study for the AP test, and it also can be useful for the essay that students have to write later in this unit. Same thing with this. This is actually a study guide, which I think could be really helpful. For, as you can see, there's Hamlet facts for the play and understanding it. So I think students will find that helpful. So as we move on to our assessments. Now this assessment specifically is geared toward essay writing in the class. So as you can see, entry level is brainstorming what key elements are necessary in creating an argumentative essay with supporting text evidence from the text. And I've made a quiz for students to be able to identify 1, 2, 3 sentences, and students will learn what 1, 2, 3 sentences are in my class. Peer grading, so students will write a paragraph about an argument that they have and give it to another peer, and the other peer has to highlight the 1, 2, 3 sentences in the paragraph. This is helpful because 1, 2, 3 sentences have to have a certain structure, and it's seeing that if they don't have that structure, then this can help them really improve their argument and the organization of their essays. And lastly, we have peer editing. Students will turn in the first draft of their essay for peer editing, so they know how to improve their writing, and the graders will know what is needed on their papers. I feel like peer editing is really useful because you'd be surprised how many students are really good editors. And not only that, but when they read ideas off another student's text, they could think, oh, that's a really good idea. Maybe I could use that to support my argument that I'm also writing about. And obviously, I will know if the students are plagiarizing, which is very, very much frowned upon. So, for the last summative assessment, students will write a final draft of their paper, which will include MLA citations. It'll be coherent and it'll be easily understandable. And students will also make a presentation that shows that they know what elements are necessary to write a convincing argument using Prezi. Now, here is the summary of what I expect for the assessment plan, and students will know what I expect to learn from them by this summary. As you can see, it's really long. And I also made a quiz for students to know what 1, 2, 3 sentences are. So we're going to go and look at that. So here's the quiz. So here we have the quiz, and the students will have to see, identify 1, 2, 3 sentences, so on and so forth. And here is the rubric for the essay they have to write. Let me just move this. So this is my grading rubric for the essay they have to turn in. As you can see, I'm very, very thorough of what I want in this essay. So there's be little confusion on what students need for this paper. So that's about it. That's our unit plan, and I hope you found it informational and helpful. And if you're watching this because you aren't sure to take my class, please come and take this class so we can learn about Hamlet together. Thank you.